Hi everyone, it's Dr. Mora here, Dr. Monica Mora. Hi everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier today. I apologize for that, but I am here now and ready to join you all in discussing positive parenting. So, hopefully, if you were here earlier, you're able to join me back now that it's 5 o'clock. And if not, it's going to be posted again in the units, the parenting units with Parenting with Dr. Mora, and it'll be in the video section as well, so you can come and find us there. So, anyway, I just want to say a belated Happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there watching today. And I hope you had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful day, and just enjoyed your babies. You enjoyed your kiddos, no matter what age they are. So, Happy Mother's Day. Um, and remember, I'd love to hear parenting wins. So if any of you watching, I know it looks like we've got a few people watching, just, feel free to pop in the comment section where you're watching from and what your parenting wins over the course of the week have been. Or just even share a fun thing that you did over Mother's Day, whether that was something, I don't know, something surprising or something just regular, or if you did nothing at all also, because that's fun too. So, quick review of what we discussed a little bit last week, and then we're going to move on to this discussion about the parenting strategy of time out, and we'll have some discussion about that. So first, would just like to say, last week we were still under the idea of dealing with tantrums, and we were talking about some things to be doing ahead of time, sort of preparing for things that you can do ahead of time just to prevent tantrums, or just to be ready. So when those tantrums do occur, you're going to have some peace of mind that you've got some things in place. And what we did talk about was some of the things that we've been talking about over the course of the week in terms of having rules, setting up rules, putting things up, putting things away, things that they might be getting into that maybe tend to be some things that your children tantrum around, to kind of get those out of the way or out of sight, so it just isn't an issue. And this is really for sort of our younger ones. We also talked about that when a tantrum happens, that the first thing really to do is just to ensure that they're safe. So if they're close, if they're flailing on the floor and they're close to something that they might hit their head on or hit their limb on, just wanting to calmly and casually move them to a space where they're a little safer in terms of not hitting their head or anything like that. We also talked about sometimes if they're in a location that really isn't safe, about having to calmly pick them up and maybe carrying them to a rug or something like that where they will be. And we also talked a little bit about trying to keep yourself calm. Remember that you're escalating your emotion or escalating your tone really doesn't help your children calm down at all. It just really escalates the situation. It escalates and intensifies the tantrum. So we talked about really the importance of helping yourself stay calm, and then trying to come from a place of empathy and compassion for your child, and just make some short statements to them about, I know you don't want to take your bath right now, but it's bath time, right? Or I know it's really hard not to get what you want. I understand that. So short sentences that sort of can communicate to them that you understand where they're coming from. And again, remember, depending on the level of the tantrum, they may or may not hear you. But sometimes a short statement of compassion and empathy is enough to sort of have your child go, oh, she understands, or he understands, and bring it down a notch, right? And so that way you are in a better place to go in and deal with the tantrum from another perspective. So we talked about that. We also talked about that sometimes at the end of those compassion statements, or that use of empathy, that if it does have a kind of a break or a moment in that tantruming behavior, that's a good in for you to get in and sort of try to use that technique of distraction, or what do we call it? Distraction or redirection into some other type of thing. So for instance, we talked about the bath time example of being, I know you really don't want to take your bath right now, but it's bath time. And then if there's that little bit of decrease, jumping in and saying, how about we go find, your shark and make the shark go in the bathtub with you? Or how about we go find the ducky, or, mama can, play ducky with you for a minute when you're in the bath, right? So we've redirected that, or the attention from I don't want to have a bath to, oh, a shark in the tub, that could be really fun, right? And so we've averted an escalation into a full-blown tantrum. So those are the kind of the things that we spoke about in our last video there. We then moved to talking about some benefits of using some helping our children learn those self-calming techniques. Remember, we need to start right away of trying to help our children learn when you have these big feelings of anger and frustration and irritation and sadness, or feelings about not getting your way or things not going your way, those kinds of things. What do you do with them, right? And we want to try to help our children learn that as soon as possible, because guess what? That's a fact of life, right? We all have to deal with those kinds of feelings at some point. It doesn't stop. And so the earlier that we can get our children to be learning that, it's a win-win for everyone, right? They're learning that skill really early. We're helping them learn techniques about what they can do with those big feelings instead of tantruming, and then we don't have to deal with the tantrums, right? So it's great. But then again, how do you do that? And so I also just want to remind you all that all of these strategies that we've been talking about and all this idea of how do we deal with tantrums, it's not just a one-shot deal. It's not just one strategy that's going to work. And it's not one strategy that's going to work the first time you do it and then you never have to have a tantrum again. That's just not how it works. And I know you guys know that, but I also know we all wish that to be the case. And so we just want to remind you that it's going to take consistency on your part to be doing this and doing this and doing this, over and over and over again. It's going to take calmness on your part to be able to implement these strategies and things like that. Hi, Stacy. And it's just going to take, like I said, just consistency, sticking with it, even though it's really hard. And those first attempts at handling these tantrums and those first attempts at doing things a little differently, they're going to feel like they're not working right away. And that's because your child is probably used to you dealing with things in a different type of way. And so, anyway, I'm going to jump into that in a minute. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but I just wanted to put that out there. These things won't work right off the bat one time. You have to continue to do them over and over and over again, right? Until your child starts to learn, oh, this is what's going to happen, right? So on that note, talking about teaching self-calming strategies, let's move in now to this idea of timeouts, okay? So I would say probably, I would bet money that most parents have heard of this strategy of timeout, okay? And I would also bet money that many parents have actually tried timeouts, okay? And timeouts are probably the most controversial parenting strategy out there for many different reasons, right? There are people who think timeouts are good, they work, and some people who say timeouts are bad, they hurt children. And so there are just two camps of thought here, right? Timeouts are either good or they're bad. But really what I think is most useful is not to get into that argument or that mentality or that way of thinking. It's either good or bad, it's right or wrong. But instead, step back for a moment and think about using something like a timeout. And we're going to talk about ways. What does it teach my child? How can it help my child? Okay? Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to back up a minute because some of the ways that parents, I think initially when timeout was brought into the parenting discussion way back when, I don't even know, I don't think many people really sat down to think about the way in which timeout could be used. And I think it was meant to be used for dealing with challenging behavior. However, I think it was initially introduced with the concept of it being more in line with a punishment, right? So it had more of a punitive feel to it. And I think that's sort of been pervasive as parents have taken it through the years, using it as sort of an ultimate that's the ultimate thing, right? And the reason why they don't work a lot of times, the reason why this concept of timeout doesn't work is because it's coming from a punitive point and you're using it as punishment, right? Or you're threatening to use it. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to go to timeout, right? If you continue to do this type of, if you continue to hit your sister, you continue to talk to me in that way, you're going to go to timeout. So using it in that way, it's not really teaching our child a way to calm themselves down or deal with what's upsetting them. What it's teaching them is to try and avoid that threat, right? To try to work their way around that so they don't hear that threat. Now, the other reason why it doesn't work a lot of times is because many times parents use it in anger. So the behavior's escalating until the parent gets to the point where they're like, I can't deal with it anymore, go to timeout, right? And so when it's used, when we as parents are in that place of anger and frustration, the way that it comes across, and we kind of say it with an elevated tone, right? Or I can't deal with you anymore, get to your room, go to timeout. That has a feeling for the child of it being about them, the person, the child, right? The kid. And they don't understand why. They don't understand what they did to get there, the behavior around it. So it just starts to feel very personal. And so a child that is used to getting timeouts in that way, it starts to feel like, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad kid. There's something about me, right, that mom or dad can't deal with. And so using it in anger, that is another reason why timeout doesn't work. That's where our calming strategies again come in. The other thing that makes timeouts not successful a lot of times is that parents use it for everything, right? Okay, you didn't pick up your laundry, go to timeout. You didn't do your homework, go to timeout. You're fighting with your sister, go to timeout. You're sassing back, go to timeout. It's used for everything, right? And so it loses, I've had parents say to me before, he doesn't care if he goes to timeout. Well, not if you use it for everything. It doesn't have that, there's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no value, I guess, in the timeout anymore. It's just sort of a, oh, well, I'm going to timeout. I'm going to go sit there, but I'm not going to change my behavior, right? Again, if you're using it for everything, we're not in that parenting mentality of teaching our child, right? How is going to timeout for everything teaching them really the behavior to do the behavior that we want? It's really not. And then lastly, I think some other things that make timeouts not effective is that we might, in addition to using them for everything, we might have those timeouts last too long, right? Sometimes kids are, sent to timeout and they're there for, instead of short periods of time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, they're in there for 20 minutes, right? They're in there for 30 minutes. And again, I've even had parents say to me, gosh, I forget about them sometimes. Or I've had my child fall asleep in timeout, okay? If your child's falling asleep in timeout, they're in timeout too long, okay? So again, that's not effective. Using their room as a place to go to timeout, again, isn't effective because they are really just going into the room and getting engaged in something else, right? And playing with something else. And so again, they're not learning to calm themselves from that escalated point, that escalated emotion. So these are just some things to think about. So I invite you all to just reflect for a moment on, if you have used timeouts in the past, how have you used them, right? Have you used them in any of these ways? And don't feel bad if you have, because guess what? Most of the time, we as parents just grasp. We grasp when we get information and we say, oh, hey, this person uses this. I think I'll use it this way. So don't feel bad about it if you recognize yourself in any of those things that I've said. Just understand in your own reflection, oh, maybe that's why it didn't work. And now let's move on to talking about a way that we can think about using a strategy that you can call timeout, you can call calming down time, you can call taking a break time, you can call it whatever you want if you're not comfortable with the timeout. I just want you to think about the idea behind this concept. and how this then can be effective, not only in decreasing that tantrumy behavior, but ultimately the most important piece is, again, teaching our children how to deal with those intense emotions. Okay? So think about this. And like I said, if you really think about a timeout, really, what does that mean? The idea behind a timeout is really to take a break, right? To take a break from whatever that escalation of emotion is, whatever is the situation that has setting them off, to take a break, right? And move aside a bit, wherever that aside might be, in the room, in the hall, right there, it doesn't matter. And just to take some breaths and calm down, right? To contain it, basically. Okay, that is what really time out is supposed to be about. And so again, don't get hung up on the title of timeout. And if you really don't like it, don't call it that. Call it, and even your children have probably learned that timeouts are, ooh, timeout, you got on timeout. So change it in your family. Call it something else, right? In my house, we call it calming down time, right? Or sometimes we just say taking a break. And so, hi Stacy. So Stacy says we use them for a time of breathing. We all need one at some point, I feel. Yes, absolutely. This is not something just for kids, right? As adults, we have those moments where we're feeling escalated in our behavior, or in our emotion, and we need to take a break. We need to go gather ourselves, gather our composure, take some breaths. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, Stacy. You nailed it. We have to help our children learn how to do that, right? So they can do that again when they're adults. It says, okay, yeah. So Stacy says we don't necessarily have a place. It's just time apart for a minute. That's right. So usually for little ones, it's nice to have a place. And for parents who are recent or who are new to using this, it's just nice to think ahead about where a child might be able to go to take that break. Okay, especially if there are other children around and that kind of thing. It's just helpful to think about, but you don't have to. You can use it anywhere, really. This kind of strategy. So remember, just always, I'm going to highlight this over and over and over again. Calming down time, taking a break time, time out, whatever it is. The goal is to help our children learn to calm themselves down, whatever it is. Bring that escalation down so that they can move forward in a positive and productive way, right? And you as a parent can do the same. You can move forward, basically. So just think about this. Again, what would be the reason to be using some technique like a calming down time or a taking break time? This goes back to what Stacy shared in her comments here about the fact that think about and Molly too, yes, taking a break, taking a breath, absolutely, all those things. You're normalizing for your children. When you're using that type of language, you're normalizing for your children that this is something we all have to do at some point, right? And even you, if you can model that for your children, that's helpful too. When you're starting to get irritated, or you feel yourself getting flustered and frustrated, it's really good for you to be able to say to your children, and I'll speak. Because I'm a mom, I'll say, guys, mom's feeling a little irritated right now. I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to take a break for a couple minutes and I'll be back, right? And so that's a great way to model for your children and communicate, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to pull myself aside, calm myself down, and I'll come back and re-engage when I'm in a calmer space, right? So that's really all important to model for your children. And so again, I wanted to just invite you all to think about your child, fast forward, I don't know how many years, to when they're adults, right? When they're adults. How do you want your children to behave when they're adults? When something doesn't go their way? Wouldn't you want them to have the skill to be able to calm themselves down, to be able to make calm decisions, whether they're in the face of fear or anger or frustration or even danger? Wouldn't you want them to have the skill of being able to have all that stuff going on and be able to stay level-headed, stay calm, and make a safe decision, make a calm decision that's not, going to make the situation worse, right? That's a invaluable skill to be teaching our children. Okay, and think about your own development, right? A lot of times, most of us, we weren't taught that per se by our parents, but it was something that we had to learn over the years. And there are some of us as adults that are still learning this, and that's okay too. But that's what I'm saying. If you think about your child now, think about them as an adult. You are doing them a tremendous good by teaching them this now, okay? And so we don't want our children to be, when they're adults, or even when they're children, or any point in their life, to be responding constantly from a place of agitation, escalation, fear, right? We don't want them to be coming from that place. We want them to be able to gather themselves and move from that space, right? So how do you do this? Right? How do you do this? So there are lots of things to do, but the first step really is to talk to your child. Begin to talk to your child now about emotions. Let's normalize that, but let's help our children, especially our young ones, develop some language and some ability to recognize what's going on when they feel these things, right? And it's going to depend on the age of your child, but just start having these conversations at points when the behavior isn't happening, please, right? And so talking to them about it, everybody feels anger at some point. Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody feels sadness. Everybody gets irritated or agitated about certain things. And you might even want to share it with them sometimes when you're feeling that way. So when you're talking about this, you can say, everybody feels irritation sometimes. Mommy feels irritated sometimes when, blah, blah, blah happens. So just have a conversation with them about that, about feelings, and helping them identify it, and helping them say, when mommy feels that way, sometimes mommy's shoulders get really tight, right? Or sometimes I feel mommy's ears feel like they're burning. So you're helping them identify in their body what anger or frustration feels like, and then you're helping them get some language about it. So that just helps them be able to recognize when they're feeling that way. And that's the first step of helping them learn to that regulation is, can they identify it, right, that it's going on. Again, this is going to take multiple times of doing this. So that's the first thing. And then you also just want to say, and it's okay to feel those things, right? It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. And then you're going to move to the next step, which is then to talk to them about what to do with that, right? And so in your conversation, you can say, it's okay to feel angry, but when you're angry, it's not okay to lash out. It's not okay to hit people. It's not okay to yell. It's not okay to throw yourself on the ground or to break things, okay? And so let's talk about what is okay. What do you do when you feel that way? And then again, have that conversation with them according to what you in your home and you as a family feel is okay. Is it okay for them to take their pillow and scream into their pillow? Is it okay for them to go outside when they're feeling angry and kick a ball, right, to get that out? Is it okay to take out a piece of paper and scribble all over it and get that out? It's okay for older kids to put on some music and listen to that for a while. So just kind of talk as a family about what's okay, what's something to do when you feel that way, right? So again, you're helping them recognize, and then you're helping them figure out, okay, I feel this way, but I don't want to do that because that's not helpful and that can be hurtful to me or somebody else. And these are the things that I can do. And so we're helping them have tools. What do I do with all of this, right? And then from there, what we do is we start to teach them, okay, I'm just looking at my notes because I get really passionate about this and I want to share, and then I forget what I've already said or what I haven't said. So what I've said is you start to teach them some ideas of what they can do, and then let them know if you have a hard time remembering that when you're angry, or if you have a hard time remembering to do that, or to help your body calm down, I will help you by doing this. And then what you do, I thought so, Malia, it's okay. Catherine had a lot of letters there for us today. But anyway, so yes, this is where we're moving then into having them understand, because we don't want to implement a calming down or a taking a break or a timeout, if that's what you're going to call it, to a child who doesn't know what you're going to do. That's going to set it up to be a big battle, right? So when at a time when there isn't a behavior, an escalated behavior, having these discussions and then moving to the point of telling them, if you have a hard time and you're not able to sit and scribble on there, or you're not able to just go to your bedroom and yell on a pillow, and you are being hurtful to yourself or to others, or you are yelling or that kind of thing, mommy will help you by doing this. And then you can explain to them. Let's say, there's a safe little space, I don't know, in your hallway or even in the same room. Just let them know, I will help you by having you sit here for just a couple minutes. And then when you're sitting there, what you can be doing is to count to 10. You can take some deep breaths. You can sing a song. You can, squeeze and release your hands 10 times. So you again are giving them tools to use when they're in that space. So you're talking about, you're giving them some options of things they can do on their own when they're feeling that way. And then you're letting them know, if you're not able to do that on your own, then mommy will help you or daddy will help you, right? And so then you're letting them know that when you say, okay, it looks like you're really upset right now, I think it's time for some calming down time. Or I think it's time for to take some breaths. And again, having them go to that space, or just, if you're going to be spontaneous, have a space where they're safe, where they can take some breaths. And then you just let them know, okay, so this is where you're going to be for a minute or for 2 minutes. It's not going to be a long extended time for you to take those deep breaths we talked about, right? Or to do the fist clenching that we practiced the other day, okay? So it's up to you as the parent to help them get there, to tell them what they should do when they're there, and then it's up to you to back away and give them some space to try to do that on their own. Now, some kids may not stay there right away. They might run away, right? But you just calmly go and take them back to where you put them. Or if you want to, you can just, again, wherever they are, have them sit where they are. Initially, you may need to sit next to them. But when you're next to them, we don't want you to talk to them and be lecturing to them or having lots of discussion. We really want you to just prompt them to use those calming down strategies that you taught them earlier and have them practice putting those things in place, okay? Because it's about developing those skills in them. Now, again, a child this is new for, they might run, you bring them back, run, bring them back, run, bring them back. You have to be consistent here, and you have to stay calm, okay? It will be frustrating for you, and so that's where your self-calming strategies come into play here, right? What happens, though, is if you let that running away behavior go, and they just run away from you, right? What happens is you've actually reinforced the behavior that you don't want, which is that escalation of behavior. Or let's say you have them to sit down and try to do those deep breaths, and they just keep screaming and crying and screaming and crying and screaming and crying, and then you finally say, you know what, this doesn't work, whatever, here's what you wanted, right? You have just, again, reinforced the behavior that you don't want. You've just reinforced that escalation of behavior, okay? So again, you have to be consistent. You have to be ready to just help them learn to calm down. Now, if they've been sitting for 2 minutes, or you see them taking their deep breaths, and you can see that irritation level has come down, you can see that frustration level has come down, that's a place for you to comment and say, that's a great job, you taking those deep breaths, like, way to go, right? Now, once they've been there for 2 minutes or whatever, and you can see that they've calmed themselves down, Then you can, let's say it was because you gave them an instruction they didn't like, or you asked them to do something they didn't want to do, and so it escalated into a tantrum. After they've done this whole little self-calming strategy, this calming down time, that's an opportunity for you to take them back to where, or give them that instruction again. And then if the first positive thing you see, comment on that, right? So if you've given them that instruction again, and this time they listen and they go do it, you really want to highlight that, okay? We're not going to pay any more attention to that escalation of behavior. We're going to focus on the fact that they're following the instruction, or that they're now sitting quietly and doing their work, or they're now cleaning up the toys that you would ask them to clean up, or that they were able to take those breaths and calm themselves down. Okay, that's what we want to focus on. Let's see what else I can tell you. I think that I've been talking about all the things I wanted to. Again, remember, we're thinking about what we're wanting to teach our children. We're wanting to teach them that skill of being able to stay calm, or to help themselves calm down when things don't go their way. Just remember that. It's beyond the fact that they don't want to go have a bath, right? That escalation of behavior, what you do with that, so when you tell them to go have a bath and they start screaming, I don't want to have a bath, no. In the moment, in the short term, in the now, it's about going and having the bath. But in the long term, in their development, in their lifespan, it's about being able to be asked to do something you don't want to do, having this emotion, and being able to, again, calm yourself down and respond from that place. Okay? So, does that make sense? I hope. It's already 31 minutes. I mean, this is such a long discussion to have, and there's so many things to have, and I really wish I could do a back and forth with you about these and any questions you have on here. But I hope that that was helpful, just in terms of, again, don't get hung up on the idea that the words time out, okay? If you don't like it, change it. Change it to calming down time, whatever. Change it so it doesn't have that negative feel to you. But ultimately, remember, the underlying point of a timeout, or the underlying point of calming down or taking a breath, is, again, to equip your child with this very, very necessary vital skill that we really want all humans to have, right? And also just remember, if you have been using it in the other ways that we spoke about at the beginning of the video, in terms of threatening to use it, or if you don't, then this, that kind of thing, just, be open to maybe considering doing it in a different way, and do it multiple times in some of the ways that I suggested, and see if you maybe get a different result, right? And see if maybe some of those acting out behaviors, or those escalated behaviors, don't tend, maybe start to decrease a little bit, right? That might be something just to pay attention to. So anyway, my time is up, folks, and I'm so happy that you were here to join me. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach out to me through the Too Cool for School Kids Camp site there. Feel free to reach out to me there. You can also find me at drmonicamora.com, and you can feel free to send me messages to my email that way as well. So hope it was helpful, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I wish you luck, and I'll see you next Monday.